Miriam moved in the middle of the pandemic. Like, she moved 3 months, it was 3-4 months after the world shut down. She talks about, moving between Airbnbs, the stress of trying to settle in during that time, because like no one trusted anyone. And it was so for them, for immigrants who moved during the time, it was doubly stressful because you're dealing with the fact that you need to kind of just adjust to the new country. But then there's rarely anyone who's willing to give you the unspoken rules that help you settle down, because you know what? Everyone is scared of everybody else. And that's really, really stressful to imagine. Let's listen to her tell that story herself. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So everyone, Maryam wrote a fantastic article called JJC's Guide to Canada, which I find pretty interesting. I mean, you wrote the first one, then we kind of syndicated it on Newcomers Podcast. And I want to almost start from there, which is like that moment you talked about, where you talked about your credit card and stuff. Like how are you feeling at that point in time? I want you to describe that, because I feel like text kind of lose some of the vitality of the moment, when you're trying to write it down. But like that moment when the guy was like, why are you giving me your card? Like, how did it feel? Like, because in Nigeria, we'll just give the person our card and be like, yo, just take it and let me go on my life.
Yeah, so I will set a little bit of context. So it was literally like, I think the week we arrived, it was during the pandemic, and everywhere was locked up. And, there was this, I don't know what to call it, this kind of stress of like being inside quarantine for like 2 weeks after arriving. And then I came out. I was literally inside for the 2 weeks, entire 2 weeks. The only thing I explored was the garden in our Airbnb. Came out, and then it was downtown, and everywhere was big and very overwhelming. So we're still trying to explore, cooking a little bit, but it's an Airbnb. You can't fry stew there. So we found this Subway. Uh, like we're already stressed out with like Airbnb, moving Airbnbs with all our luggage. And so that we just found this Subway. I was like, oh, I've always wanted to try this place. And then I got inside and I found out that service people are not very nice. They're not always nice. It's not their fault, but so there was that vibe of like, just answer me. And I kept asking, please, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then I gave the guy my card, and and he stared at me for like 15 seconds, like, what are you doing? And he literally asked me, what are you doing? And I was like, and he's like, he just brought the thing. Like, he rolled his eyes and brought the thing, and then you can tap it here. It was so embarrassing because it was already like very short, and like, I don't have time for this. It's the pandemic. Just get out. And it was super embarrassing, but also funny. I was like, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. He could have probably just explained to you and say, hey, I can't take your card or something, like, instead of just going through all the emotions and asking you what you're doing. But I guess people will be people, and people, or he just maybe, again, you can also say he was also stressed out, because that pandemic time was just a very funny time for everyone.
It was a lot for everyone, actually. Yeah. I think it depends on the person, it depends on the mood, and I see that now that we are more outside now. There's no like the quarantine there's no quarantine anymore. I think some people are more patient, once they hear, maybe they're more exposed, once they hear your accent, or they see like, oh, you're trying to figure things out, they're helpful sometimes. So it's better now, actually. But then it was like high stress. Everyone was like, please don't talk to me. I don't want to be here, and all of that.
When exactly did you move?
In the middle of quarantine, July. First week of July.
July 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Gosh.
I know. It was an insane time. Now that I'm thinking about it, we've come up for air. I'm like, wow, that was actually crazy. We were crazy to leave everything behind and come when the world was like locked up and all of that. It was a lot.
Wait. I mean, I moved 2021, and I know that mean, things had eased up a bit,
Mm.
but there was people you could still you could go to the bank and stuff. You wore a mask and all that stuff. Now, just how did you do all the things like settling in, filling out registration forms, all those things? Like, how did you do those things during that time?
It's a story because it was a journey. First of all, it's like follow who no road. So on the first for banks and that we had family who had come. They did like a soft landing. They came, they looked around, they did their own. They came in 2019, and then they
Yeah,
went back to Nigeria to put things together and come back. So they had contact of someone in a bank. And so that guy, we just called up the guy, oh, we want to open this bank account. And then he got our details and he sorted that one out. Then we went to the bank. It was just a lot of follow no, who no road, but they were also still figuring things out. So we got lost a lot. Oh my God, we got lost a lot. A lot of mistakes. Yeah, a lot of mistakes, a lot of getting lost, a lot of frustration. Like the first week, for instance, now we were so stressed. Like, oh, I want to get a job. Oh, Airbnb, and we're like, oh, let's book this Airbnb for 2 weeks. We'll get a house in 3 weeks. Like by week 3 or week 4. Oh God. So and then we had to then like that didn't happen obviously. And then we now had to move Airbnb to Airbnb to Airbnb, like 3 or 4 Airbnbs in the space of like a, almost 2 months with
yeah,
everything we brought from Nigeria. That was stressful. And like it's not
I
even
can
like
imagine.
it's not physical stress now because like you build resilience. Now I'm like, but then I think it was the emotional bit too. That was more because you're navigating somewhere new. And missing my boss, then I would be so stressed and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like there was a time I had to just say, oh, like not say, oh, I like just stopped randomly because I was going in the wrong place and my phone died because it was always like I
Huh?
was always looking at my Google Maps like this, like following every stop, and then looking. I couldn't like look away, but fortunately because of that, my phone died, and I now had to go to a Starbucks. Thankfully, then I plugged my phone because I always have a charger, and I had to wait for like another 15 minutes. I missed the appointment, obviously. So all of that
Yeah,
emotion was emotional. It was more emotionally tasking than like the stress itself. Because now if I miss my bus, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna call an Uber or I'm gonna just walk. And interestingly, it was just a 15 or 20, 30 minutes walk away from where I was going. So I would have just walked if I knew like my way around. So settling in was more in the pandemic, to answer your question directly, it was more the emotional part of it than like the stress was there. I'm not discounting the fact that it was very stressful. People were tense. Nothing was open. It wasn't easy to find help easily, but the lack of familiarity, the strangeness, and then that confusion, like it was more here for than like
yeah,
you know I think that was it. So, but asking people for help, I found that also asking people for help was helpful, but also filtering that help. Because you ask people for help, like, yeah, try this thing, and then you overstimulated with information too, and then you make mistakes too. So it was always also like that's why I said it's more mental, like having like that mental resilience on one hand to cope with the stress, but also having like this conviction to say, I'm gonna think about this very carefully. I'm gonna try this thing. And if I make a mistake, I will try again, So trusting
yeah,
yourself too is yeah. I think that was it was very difficult, but that was the not like in retrospect now, that was the thing that was probably missing, you know.
yeah. I hear you on that, and I can imagine. While you were saying that story, I just remembered that when we just landed, like if you coughed in the store or something, everyone would literally just look at you, and that was probably just a small example, but I can imagine that tense nature or that thing that was happening at that point in time meant that interactions were a bit stifled. There was just some erosion of trust that had happened, and so it just meant that things. So, and then if you're a new person in that is just trying to find your way, it means all of a sudden you've lost some of the support you would normally get from the society to kind of help you to settle in faster. So you talk to someone, person is just like, hey, yo, just kind of stay back. And because also back in Nigeria, we weren't exactly following the social distancing and pandemic rules. So just kind of switch to somewhere where it was the extreme opposite of that's enough to really
Yeah,
kind of hit you hard.
yeah. I think for me that resonates because if you look the guy, there was a point I made about people are, how they said, oh, Canadians are friendly. I'm saying across the board now. It was a
Yeah.
culture shock. I was like, that's not true so much. Uh, that was my
They're
experience.
polite.
They're
They're
polite,
polite.
exactly. Yeah, but very polite. Oh my God, very, very polite. Oh my God, you go first and that. But like when it came to like, friendliness for my own translation was I could walk up to anyone and that. But I found that it wasn't so, but I think it was more also due to the pandemic, at least for then. If you read the guide, I wrote something about like just say good morning and get it pushing, right? And yeah, so I found that like I would want to like just ask something, and it's like, you just say hi, and then you want to say hey, and then you're just like, yeah, just I beg. So that was that. There was one instance where we were at the store, and I was at the store with a family member, and we're on this aisle. So then I found out the aisles had arrows that you had to only go in one direction. I Again, that
Yeah.
was strange. It doesn't happen anymore
Yeah. I
now.
remember that.
Certainly. But back then, I found it very strange. So I didn't know even. I was just going into aisles as I know aisles work. And then this one was almost on the other end of the aisle, and we're coming this. So she was in the right direction anyway. But I also noticed people don't necessarily follow it now that I think about it. So then she just
Yeah.
saw us, and then she just started saying, she wasn't speaking to us, she was just saying, go, like she was doing this to us. And I was already active, like, sorry, who are you talking to? Like, what's going on? Who are you talking to? I just ignored her and I went. So when I was going behind her, because she blocked the entire thing. She was shopping and she blocked the entire thing. And she's like, you will not pass here and all of that. So I was like, what's going on? So I moved around and she now started talking about the arrow. You're not supposed to be here and that. So very, very, and I was like, it's just chill, you know? So things like that had happened, but I also see how she must have been like, oh, I don't want these people close to me. I follow this arrow because of social distancing and that. And all these people are not following social distancing. I didn't know that the arrows worked. And now that we are all outside, the arrows are not there anymore. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, and this is someone that must have smiled at us maybe earlier in the store, and we just like looked at each other and smiled, made eye contact and smiled. But when boundaries were, you're
They're
just like, oh my God,
crossed and stuff.
just yeah, and I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, what did I do to you? But I found that it was that kind of thing of
Yeah,
yeah,
the pandemic really did a lot.
it is.
It did a lot, to be honest. It did a lot because I remember that time when we just landed, and I used to say to my wife that people would look at you, and you could just sense that it was don't come near me, like just do what you want to do and just move on, like you just move on. And I feel like on a normal day, like you wouldn't care. On a normal day, you wouldn't care, but it just feels like at that moment you're trying to find your way, and so all those boundaries that were artificial boundaries that kept on showing up, you know, either in the body language or in the mask, or how people talk to you, or how people reacted when you try to ask them a question when you are confused about something. It just made everything a bit harder. It just made everything a bit like you just felt like there was just, okay, like what's going on? Like what did I was this was
Agreed,
this was this the right move? Should I have come
agreed,
now?
agreed. Yeah, it felt like there were more barriers to like assimilation. And
Yes.
I would flag that it wasn't that we were not maxed. It wasn't that we were not like socially distancing. So I just that caveat just to ensure, communicate that, because I mean, if you're not maxed and you're going up all up in people's faces, it's like
Yeah,
back
then
up,
that's
right?
a problem. Yeah,
Obviously.
exactly.
But it wasn't that. We're maxed, we're safely distanced. from people. We're not like invading people's space. I wasn't invading anyone's space. But even like on going on walks with my nephew, and we'd be walking, and then somebody would just come down entirely from the thing and go the other way. So I was like, why are these people being, is it because of this? Like, what's going on? Yeah, so very like I said, did you notice that? So and it was like a running joke, like, oh yeah, let's just, if you're all going out as a family, we'll just say, let's just take the whole thing. They're just gonna come down. They're like, don't worry, no, I don't need to make space. They're all going to come down. Let's take the whole space. So it became like a joke of
Yeah.
like, let's go. Like, and normally it's like, oh, people are gonna pass. Like, don't worry, they will not pass. They will come down. They will try and avoid us as much as possible. So it was
Yeah.
that. Like, and it's better now. I mean, there's still
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's still people that are hostile everywhere, but now there is people are more less cautious and more guarded. Yeah.
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 So I was going to ask you. I mean,
Mm.
I was going to ask another question, but I remember you said something about what's it called? Mistakes you made. And
Okay.
I would love to just talk about those mistakes. Like, or what do you think are the three biggest mistakes you made during those first
Oh,
2-3 months?
biggest
Oh,
mistakes. Not networking. And I'm not even talking about like jobs or whatever. It's just like I'm an introverted person, and
yeah.
I'm an introverted extrovert. I'm finding myself like talking more comfortably with people. But
Mm-hmm.
typically I don't talk to people I don't know. I always try to like, get psychological safety before I walk up to people and talk to people. It's always shocking. That's why I say I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted
Yeah.
introvert. So coming here with like not have I the biggest mistake was not building those skills of, because you're going somewhere. I always say Canada is like going to school again, but like the school is the whole
Mm.
country. Like you're the new kid, you came from the village. Okay,
Gosh,
let me know it's village.
that's a really good. I mean, and it's village, whatever it works. Sorry to cut you.
Yeah,
That's a really good way to put what happens when you move. Actually,
yeah,
it's like the
exactly.
new kid in school.
Yeah, you're like the new kid in school. I use village in that context of you came from like a very homogenized community or homogenized system, and then you came into like this very big thing, and then you're figuring out the nuances and that. So I wish I networked more with like different people, different races and people, and I built that skill on
Mm-hmm.
just talking to people, anyone I knew here in Canada, LinkedIn, Twitter, social media, make has opened the world, and I wish I leveraged that more to get like broader perspectives, not like this very, you're talking to people and like, oh, this is scary, this is scary, this is scary, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So that would have informed my career choices. I would have made like better career choices. Like I don't have regrets where I am now. I feel like those mistakes led me here because I'm doing so much learning now. I just
Mm-hmm.
wish I had facilitated that earlier,
Yeah.
and facilitated that earlier, because I was very reluctant to leave home and come here. I was like, oh, new place and all of that. School again, going to a new school, you don't want to leave your friends, you don't want to leave
Yes.
your family, and
Yes.
so I'm
Yes.
very, very reluctant. And I wish like I just let go of my reluctance and just, it is what it is, and build that skill. Second mistake, biggest mistake, was that Airbnb thing. We should have
Mm-hmm.
booked that 2 months, 1 month. Just seriously, we would have booked it and enjoyed and just chilled. And it's because we had fun too. We walked
Yeah.
a lot, like we walked 1 hour walks, just exploring Ottawa then. Yeah, you know, exploring, taking photos and that. So I wish we just booked the Airbnb and just with faith to say, okay, you know what? Let's just enjoy this thing. Let's chill, and we are good for now until we got very settled. So I think that was like a very big mistake. I was like, oh, I would never make that mistake again. What else? Hmm. Yeah, I think this the networking thing and like making friends thing. So it's more tied to,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
making more friends. And I mean, I did that too. Thankfully, I remember someone saying, "Oh, I don't have friends in Ottawa," and I just DM'd her like, "I just moved." Well, like that was almost 6 months after I came, and she was telling me, "Oh, don't do this, don't do that," and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, okay. Why?" So I wish I asked why more. I think too, like, okay, why do you have this stance? What has been your experience, and also knowing that experiences are valid but not universal. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good lesson to learn, especially once you move out to a very diverse
Hmm.
country. You
Hmm.
start to learn that the experiences are very contextual. Like
Yes.
there's the person, there's the time, there's the
Hmm.
place, there's a ton of things that are happening that define what that experience turns out and how the person takes that lesson. And
Yeah.
then what that person internalizes and says to you. So
Exactly.
there's all that layers that go on. And so what you hear at the end is the person's internalization of the experience and their bias and their perspective, and they tell it to you. And then so if you're not careful, you take that and you're like, yo, that's the gospel truth. No,
This is
it's not. That's the person's gospel truth.
exactly, exactly, exactly,
you know.
exactly, exactly. Oh yeah, one more mistake is some courses I would not have spent.
No,
Oh,
everyone does that mistake. It's
oh my
okay. Everyone
God. Oh, money that I didn't have, and I was paying monthly, thousands of
yeah,
dollars that I did not have.
everyone does that mistake. It's
Oh,
and it's kind of related to that. It's one thing why I say to people that it's not like I made that mistake. I did a lot of courses that I shouldn't have. Like, but again, I just say to myself that the knowledge
it's
wasn't
not worth
wasted.
it.
But one thing I know that I did really well was something I call it informational interviews. So literally just reaching out to people on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, I'm moving to Canada. I work in marketing. I just want to talk to you and just kind of get a sense of what the industry looks like. I just want to learn. Just a chat, a virtual chat. I did like about 20 or 30 of that before I left Nigeria. You
Hmm.
know, some of them had weird times, some of them had, but the point was that what he did for me was that I was really very much more confident in myself when I moved here. I had a network of people I could talk to and say, "Hey, I'm in town." And they were like, "Oh, yeah, send me your CV."
Yep.
There was a lady I spoke to then. She got me an interview for a role, but I wasn't hired. She got me, I landed February 4th.
Hmm.
She got me an interview for a role March,
Hmm.
just 1 month. I wasn't hired. She reached out to me yesterday and she was like, "Hey, Dozie, there's another role I would like you to get. I would like to get you on if you're interested." But again, it turned out it was a hybrid role and I had moved out of, she thought I was still living in Ottawa. I had
Oh,
said, "No, I live in Calgary now." But the point is that, like, these things are things I did like 3 years ago, and it's all still paying
yeah,
back in its own way. And so I say to people, like, if you're moving and you want to work, like, just start to talk to, just reach out to people on LinkedIn. Like, people will
always.
talk to you. Yeah, they will
Yes.
just virtually like, "Hey, can I just jump on a call with you? This is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do." Some people will say no. Some people,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Some people will
Yeah.
say yes, and you'll do that.
Yeah.
And then what I always did also is, once the call was done, I would ask them, I'll be like, "Hey, is there someone else you think I should talk to? Please do me an introduction." That
Mm.
literally meant that I just kept on getting extra more people to talk to. And like, so I feel like that's one thing people should really try out. Like, just reach out and say, "Hey, I'm moving," and all that kind of stuff.
100%, 100%. It's always like, who knows someone, because it's like it's a trust. Is a trust economy, or is that what they call it here?
Yes, yes. It's a trust economy. Yes, it is. It is a
Yeah,
trust economy.
it's not like Nigeria where it's like, the people who are leading this industry, have all these prodigies, and then it's not that kind of like everyone knows everyone in a sense. If you're an
Yeah.
industry, how you and I found out we have all these other people that we say, oh, I know this
Yeah.
person, I work with this person, I work with this person. It doesn't work like that. It's so broad, and it's like millions of people. So
Yeah.
why should I hire you? I don't know you from anywhere. And it's more like,
Mhm.
oh, I've worked with Dozier now at KPMG, and Dozier knows this person. So there's that trust. thing
Yeah,
that
there's that.
bridges the gap, it's
Yeah,
yeah, I always say it's like, oh, how do I get into, I was like, talk to people. Everything they say
yeah.
is not Bible. Take what you need, but talk to as many people, ask them questions. There was someone that told me, yeah, don't do marketing, don't do this marketing that you have. You're not going to get a job. I know all these people that did not get
Oh
a job.
gosh.
She's right. She's right. And she's very right because I know people that are trying to get jobs in like that field in Canada that have not. However, what I said to someone else, that I was like, I spoke to this person. Two people have asked me again, like they're trying to get there, and it's like, I spoke to this person. This is what she said to me. And I find that it can be true. I will not tell you don't do it. I wouldn't say you're better off doing it, because what if you are the one? Like, it happens in industries. Medicine was something like that, where they were not really hiring Nigerians in some departments. They were hiring one person, one
Yeah,
resident in one department out of thousands per year. And I know someone that she was in Nigeria. She was the first Nigerian to get into that program. And now there are more Nigerians there. So I keep saying, just try it. Don't say, oh, I'm not going to do it because there's nobody there. Yes, it's hard. Try it. If it doesn't work out, then do so. If that's what you really want to do, I was like, you have opportunity. It's hard. You're starting all over again. Try. If it doesn't work out, then on to the next. But don't
yeah,
not try. Don't discount yourself. So talking to people, is what will give you that insight. But if you're
yeah,
going on your own, you're supposed to get somewhere in 4 years, you're going to get there in like 15. It's not like,
yeah,
fine, it's not the end of the world, but like,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
So I'm going off left right now. So I know you talk about I've heard you talk about immigrant identity, and we talked a bit about it in the pre-show and last time we spoke about, how we struggle with who we are. Are you Canadian? Are you Nigerian? And then how we now, in that struggle, we start to look for things that are familiar and that we just hold on to them really hard, like religion being one of them. And so I want to just explore that with you. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
uh,
Um, you know, if you have kids, how do you plan to handle that? That kind of thing.
ah, that is so that is such a layered question. So I don't have kids, so I will not touch on the kids section now. I will start with myself, obviously. It's such
Yeah.
a layered, it's so layered, because even after we had the pre-show conversation, more experiences, more scenarios have happened to me that I kept on reflecting on, that I've also added to that. So 100%, for most of us that come, we hold on to our religion. 90%. I mean, even for me personally, I was struggling with like my faith when I came to Canada then. And here I find that, so there's this thing of like, oh, people go to Canada and Muslim women stop wearing the hijab. People come to the West and Muslim women stop wearing their hijab, or they stop going to church or whatever. For me, I found that I've been more religious and more grounded in my faith, interestingly. And I know it's very, very, you're very correct that it's something that I have to hold on to. But it's also layered meanwhile, and I'll get to that shortly. So my faith was something that was more grounding, because like the I'm not Yoruba here, as in, at least institutionally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Yoruba institutionally. I am still. I always be that. But institutionally, that's not recognized. I'm not
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nigerian here unless I say it. That's not recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that is, because it's not just who I am as a person. Back home is grounded in like the institution, the country, everything that makes up the system that we live in recognizes and validates who I am, right from when I was
Yeah.
born. At local government, everything is validating of what makes me, right? Or they makes you the immigrant. But when you come here, all of that is stripped away. You're given a new identity. You're taking a new form. Your name is butchered. You have to always. So everything that makes you, that you don't have to explain rice and stew to anyone. You don't have to say, oh, is it tomato stew? Everyone just gets it. And all of that is stripped away here. And then you're just put in a box. You're like black, or
Yeah.
or immigrants, African immigrants. And then people always try to figure out where you are, where you're from. And then they say, oh, no, I'm not Senegalese because of my headscarf. I'm not Senegalese. I'm not Gambian. I don't speak French. So even in those conversations, you're also trying to still validate who you are, even if it's not it's not part of the institution, it's not part of the system. So
Yeah.
there's erasure. Like you're coming here, it's like you're going through this. As you're coming out of the airport, that machine is just washing everything, and then you're just blank. Then they start throwing things at you, and like, yes, an immigrant, a Canadian immigrant from Africa. This is who you're supposed to be, and you're like, no, I'm not. And then they also, for you to also fit in, you have to still strip those things away. So
Yeah.
that is like so my faith was the one thing that is here. They're like, oh, there's a Muslim community here. But this is where it gets interesting, is that even in the community, even in that religion, there is still that stripping away of your identity where people still try to throw you out. In the Muslim community is, I don't want to get deep into it because it's very layered. Most of us who are African or Black, we also still try to find our place because it is dominated by Muslims from like predominantly Arab or Asian heritage. And so for us too, they're still trying to figure us out. So you're there and they're like, are you revert? A revert is like you're not born Muslim and then you reverted into. So they start like there's that perception for a lot of people in that community about being a revert, or like you didn't grow up. And I'm like, I was my whole generation are Muslim. It's not that there's anything wrong with that anyway. Like there's nothing wrong with being a revert. I would make that clear. But that is another thing, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to deal with this now. So there's that. There's like the board. A lot of I saw like one Black imam once since 4 years, just one since I came to this country. So those are the things that even that's why I'm always like, yeah. So I know people like to hold on to the faith, and I'm like, I'm holding on to the faith because it's for me. It started off as like community, but I'm like, yeah, it's always going to be like that as long as I'm not back home. So so that's my personal life part of it. Then in now the workplace, I'm privileged to have a very good manager at work, and we had that very very conversation about like I find myself masking a lot at work where in my house, we are building that identity and it's growing, and like I know who I am in my house, right? Because I've built that safe space here. It's a Nigerian home here, or a Nigerian Canadian home here, mostly Nigerian anyway. But in the workplace again, it's even more. The filter is there because that's your livelihood. You spend a lot of your time there, and you're just navigating all these nuances. And I was telling my manager that I find myself masking a lot at work because I'm not really speaking up and I'm just like observing. And she's always like, you feel uncomfortable. I sense you're uncomfortable. Say something. And because I'm like in my house, I will have said something that's not going to fly. But when I'm uncomfortable, I'm like, is it safe to talk? So seriously, like, is it safe? Because of power dynamics, especially, and like, I don't want to contextualize and talk, and you know what I'm saying. So it's mental. It's not like I decided. You don't decide. I find that you don't just decide and say, "Oh, I have to do this." It just your brain just says. That's what I mean by psychological safety. Like, it's not safe here. So and that like sense of self and purpose and identity. And she said, these are people. She keeps saying, yes, there is a power dynamic, but these are human beings like you, and you are also a person. So you don't get to leave parts of yourself at home. Try to remember like that identity. So it's now like for me now, it's the work I'm doing now that I encourage everyone to do is to take everything and be very, very like take it in however ways. It's an act of resistance, it's an act of revolution, and it's an act of survival. For me, seriously, however you can find bits of yourself, however you can express it. For me, I wear my colorful outfits. I wear my native when I want to wear my native to the masjid. I will wear my full, even on a regular Friday. I will dress up. If you like, say it's not season appropriate, I will wear what I want, because like we're colorful people. Wearing color is my own way. Learning to say, actually, I'm Nigerian, not oh, I'm Canadian. I'm Nigerian, and speaking in my accent and trying reducing the code switching thing. So bringing bits of myself wherever is work, whatever is, but it's people. We are here to make money,
Yeah.
and we are people that we are here to make money. We are not living. Yes, we leave the home because it's not home. It's not. There's no
Yeah.
bed for me to sleep in. you
Yeah.
know. So I leave that family. I leave my family there because my family can't go to work with me. But I'm bringing myself. So however you can bring yourself, bring your rice and stew to work. Bring it to work. Maybe not Iru stew, but bring rice and stew to work if
Thank
you
you for
can.
clarifying that.
Not
So
a
that you don't
foriro.
just like, so that you don't
Yeah,
destroy the
exactly. Leave a
microwave.
foriro at home, yes. But bring your rice and stew at home. Bring your jollof pasta. Bring your jollof rice. Tell people, actually, again, what I said in my article, spell out your name. Say it out, even if they're not going to get it. If I say Atoyebi, they won't get it. But I always ensure that I pronounce it, my surname, with the dialect, the way it's supposed to be pronounced. I'll spell it for you, it's fine. But I will pronounce it, you will know it. So those little ways of bringing myself into the thing, because it's very, very easy to lose your identity and you're like, and then people, because they will tell you who you are, they will keep telling you, like I'm saying that, like the system will tell you who you are for you, and then you're there like, but this is not me. And
Yeah.
and then it's like it goes on for like for the rest of your life. And then you have kids now, to talk about the kids thing. Your kids are there also saying, oh, I don't know, you know, because everyone will tell you who you are. And that's the worst thing that can happen here.
Hmm. I
A
You're so
lot.
right.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. You're so right. It's a lot actually. It's a lot because just trying to deal with that and then the mental exhaustion that comes from it, like that's the thing for me, is the mental exhaustion, the energy to kind of go again and again.
Yep.
And then the bias and all those things, and then the passive aggressiveness and all the things that come at you, the statements people make sometimes, just like how the friend, yes, that my friend I told you about, that was sick, and the nurse comes in after he has gone through different checks. This guy is probably having a mini stroke or something. The nurse says that his body's struggling. She says, is there any history of drug abuse? And I just looked at her and I'm just like, come on. I'm like, come on. You just came to take his BP. He's gone through the process. He's seen doctor has checked him 2 times. A nurse has come, done his blood work. You're just here to check his BP to see what's going on. You see that he's uncomfortable, and what you ask me, is there any history of drug abuse?
Yep.
And there are two ways to look at it. I wonder whether it's just me just being defensive because if I feel like when you get hit a lot by certain things, you start to see
Yeah.
everything through a certain lens. So these days I try to say to myself, be careful with the lens. You like always ask yourself, what lens are you looking at this through? So, but the point is that I'm asking, like, in that moment, like, was that question necessary? Like, the guy has a high BP. Yes, the hospital is worried about that he might relapse again. He's going through stuff right now, and then you're asking me if there's history of drug abuse because he's struggling. Like, come on. But yeah.
Yeah. So there's something I learned about in my work called like intersectionality, like cultural competence. It's not even cultural competence. It takes cultural competence to the next level. Cultural competence is outdated. I found out that cultural competence is outdated. So, and that's what I find, that even people who are trying to help, or people who help people, especially people who help people in the system, that is a skill that is sorely lacking. And it's intersectionality is just considering how someone experiences the world, all of the layers. For instance, in my last the rant I did, or the talk just before now, was about all these layers of that influences who I am, that shapes who I am as a person. and the importance of not leaving that behind. But because this system is so used to just painting people with like a brush and just seeing people like through very one-dimensional lens, like, oh, this person is this, so they must be this. And it's and that consideration is not there. So if there was consideration for this person is probably an immigrant and this and that, so this person will experience the world in this, then you're sensitive to how to approach this person, especially in that sense. But especially, medicine, notorious. It's not just medicine. That's why I'm like, people will help people. There is that, it's textbook, they read this thing and they study this thing based on cases. So like they've studied the human body and the things that have happened to the human body in different contexts. So they're just like, check these things. So this is your checklist. And it's like, checklists are, they are not flexible. So it's like, so when you have that skill, you know that, oh, this is not a right question to ask right now. You could ask later on just to be like, oh, and then even if you're asking, there's a sensitivity to ask, like, this is just a checklist and it's fine. I'm just asking for that. So it's how it is presented. But then if you communicate to a medical professional, it's like, oh, it's just protocol. And it's like, we're not saying don't do protocol. We're not saying you're not doing your job. It's just the intersectional, like the sensitivity about it and consideration of this is the nuance that informs this person's experience in the world. So how am I presenting information to them? It's not, and it's not fragility that you cannot accept or just navigate that kind of difficult question, because it's probably valid. They're trying to do their job and help. But it's like, if you're helping me and you're dismissing, or you're just like, it's not a very great experience. And for me, I'm always, and to answer the question about to add to the comment you mentioned about the lenses, it's two things for me. I never lose sight of the fact that this is the world I live in. Because if I lose sight, I am going to be harmed in many ways, in a myriad of ways, and I would then become desensitized to it. And desensitized to, how my humanity, because your sense of self and all those things, how you see yourself too. And then it becomes dehumanizing at some point, and I must not be desensitized to it. Secondly, on the other hand, too, is also nuance too, of like, okay, this is not okay. This person doesn't have the skill, and just like, where does this fit into the thing? So because if you're also very it just makes you more anxious too.
Aggressive about it also.
If you're very like aware, if you're hyper aware of everything, it makes you more anxious. It's not the aggression. I have my opinion about how you respond to things. You don't have to be nice if people are not treating you nicely, and you're being like, your humanity is not being you're not safe. If you're not feeling safe, I don't know about niceness. Is not, you shouldn't be. I'm not saying you shouldn't be. I'm not saying what people should do anyway, but it's you're going to be more anxious, and it's not helpful if you're more anxious too. So it's just that balance, like, the world is crazy, but there are good people in the world, and some people are just ignorant and they don't know better. I don't have to accept it, but I'm not going to let this, it's just, so that's how I see it now. It's that balance of, so you're not stressed and anxious.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. It's a good filter, like, which is like, look, there are horrible people, there are great people. If I meet the horrible person, that's okay. I will, depending on how I see you, like, I'll always ask myself, is it a big problem or a small problem? If it's a small problem, I'll just ignore and move on. If it's a big problem, then I will give you the response you deserve at that point in time. But yeah, it's something to deal with, to be honest. Something to deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna end this here, because like, I feel like this is, oh gosh, like, I want to go think about what you just told me now. Thank you so much for getting to this part of the episode. I really appreciate that you stayed all the way to the end. And I hope that you found something useful from the story. If you know someone else who might find it useful, please send this to them. And as usual, like I always say to everyone, please like, share, subscribe. We're on Substack, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast, you'll find us there. The Newcomers Podcast. Please subscribe. And if you know someone you think we should talk to, please send them our way. Thank you so much.